When we knew that Gorbachev was thinking about reform, we saw he would not oppose our reforms, and that was important to us.
At the Warsaw Pact summit, the leaders were divided. Honecker, like Romania's Nicolae Ceausescu, was alarmed by what was happening in Poland and Hungary.
Honecker, and particularly Ceausescu, were against our reforms. On one occasion, we were having a meeting with him in his residence on the outskirts of Bucharest. He and his wife, Raisa, and myself were having a discussion. Our passions really ran high. We spoke in such loud voices that we had to remove all our security people so that they wouldn't hear us.
We heard that Ceausescu of Romania, Jakeš of Czechoslovakia, and Honecker were organizing some sort of conspiracy. They wanted to talk Gorbachev into intervention against Poland and Hungary. They said that these nations had already passed the limits of what was acceptable in socialist countries.
When I heard the first proposal from Ceausescu on this, I looked at the other side of the table where the Soviet delegation was seated, and our eyes crossed each other's eyes. So he was signaling to me that, okay, don't argue against it. So in other words, he sent me by his eyes an important message that you don't have to say a word. It will not happen. And it did not.
In July, President Bush visited Poland and Hungary. The West gave them moral support for democratic change, but little more.
We did have some modest economic packages for both countries, but really, we did not want to kind of pump money down a rat hole either. We wanted to be sure that the economic reforms, the moves towards free markets, those things, were for real, that they were going to continue. This dismantling was made possible by the...
In Hungary, Bush was presented with a piece of barbed wire, a souvenir of Hungary's dismantled Iron Curtain.
We believe that the artificial, physical, and spiritual walls still existing in the world someday shall collapse everywhere. And that is just beautiful. Thank you, sir. I don't know, I'm kind of an emotional sort of person anyway. I cry too easily. I did then, I do now. And I had tears in my eyes when I was given this symbol of the end of the Cold War.
On his Wyoming ranch, James Baker, Bush's Secretary of State, discovered a real friendship for Eduard Shevardnadze, the Soviet foreign minister.
Excuse me, I'm from the Park Service. Do you guys have a fishing license? Absolutely.
Baker confirmed to Shevardnadze that the United States would tread carefully in Eastern Europe and would not exploit Soviet problems there.
What was achieved at Jackson Hole was, I think, a new atmosphere of trust. Everyone on the American side, as a matter of fact, felt it was very important that we assist Gorbachev and Shevardnadze and the reformers in the Soviet Union in any way we could to arrive at a soft landing. The Cold War didn't have to end with a whimper. It could have gone out with a bang.
Already in communist China, a surge of demands for human rights and democracy had ended in tragedy. On Tiananmen Square in Beijing, tanks and troops had attacked peaceful demonstrators and slaughtered them. The world shuddered. Would reform in Eastern Europe end like this? Erich Honecker in East Germany admired the Chinese solution to political protest. Honecker refused to admit that anything was wrong with his own system.
I told them that they were responsible for the situation in their own countries. You decide what reforms you need. We need perestroika. Whether you need perestroika is up to you. Honecker said, we've done our perestroika. We have nothing to restructure.
But in reality, East Germany was rotting away. Pollution poisoned air and water. The economy was running down. The police state stifled all initiative. There was apathy in public, daydreams in private.
Wissen Sie, die meisten in der DDR hatten sich eingerichtet, hatten sich zurückgezogen.
Most people in the GDR withdrew into their private lives.
Absolvierte den Job.
You went to your job, saw to it that your private life was protected from harm.
Einbringen kann, integrieren kann.
Then you withdrew into your home, with your friends, in your own private world.
Die berühmte Datscha, die man hatte, zurück. Und die
You criticized society at home,
die wurden, ja,
but only among people you trusted.
Vertrauten Kreis sehr kritisch beleuchtet.
Eine Videokamera.
There was a video camera installed in the building opposite us, which was trained on our window. Every private word we said, every dispute about who had to do the dishes, every argument with the children was listened to and noted down. Everyone who entered our house was videotaped.
That summer, East Germans rushed to take holidays in Hungary. There was an escape hatch. Hungary's border with the West was weakening. In Budapest, East Germans besieged the West German embassy, demanding help to emigrate.
It was known that every German from the GDR who chose to live in freedom and democracy would get all possible support from us.
The West German Chancellor, Helmut Kohl, had confidence in Gorbachev. Kohl planned to rescue the Hungarian economy if the East Germans were allowed to go west. He trusted Gorbachev not to block the deal with the Hungarians.
Die hier stehenden Mitglieder, Bürger der DDR, können mit ihnen DDR passieren, das Land verlassen.
The Hungarians agreed to let the East Germans cross to the west. Honecker called the refugees moral outcasts.
I believe he felt a mixture of anger and utter contempt for these masses of people.
Wie überhaupt bei jemandem im Einzelnen auch, der das tat. In einer Mischung.
These ungrateful people who had run over to the other side.
Über Undankbarkeit nenne ich's mal.
The refugees had been traveling from East Germany to Hungary in the hope of getting to the west. Now East Germany blocked travel to Hungary. Desperate, the fleeing East Germans turned to Czechoslovakia. They gathered at the West German embassy in Prague.
We had no prospects. I didn't want my child to grow up under that repression. It wasn't just that we couldn't travel, it was small everyday things.
When the embassy was full, the refugees climbed into the garden.
We didn't know what was going to happen to us. We knew there were many people inside waiting, but we weren't sure whether there would be police inside, or even the state security police, the Stasi. We walked fearfully along the fence, and then people from inside the embassy came up and said, "Don't you want to come in?" We were astonished and said, "Yes." "Wait," they said, "we'll get a ladder." We climbed the fence and were inside. At first, we saw just people. It was frightening, people everywhere.
More and more refugees crammed themselves into the embassy and refused to leave.
Ich habe da keine Perspektive gehabt. Gearbeitet die Woche 70 Stunden, 30 Stunden maximal geschlafen und am Ende 1500 Mark drüber geblieben. Das ist nicht normal, das ist keine Perspektive für meine Familie und mich.
The Czech police made futile attempts to stop the inrush. Inside the embassy, the overcrowding and squalor grew worse day by day. Both German governments, East and West, were at their wits' end. West Germany's foreign minister, Hans-Dietrich Genscher, came to Prague. Under Soviet and West German pressure, Honecker had consented to a face-saving deal. The refugees could go to West Germany, but only if their train crossed East German territory first. Then Honecker could claim that he had expelled them and cancelled their citizenship.